So I'm just going to remove that layer. And let's just rub it in, smooth out those edges. If you don't want them going down onto that line, pull them up. And I don't mind that little white showing through. It's just more texture. But didn't that really brighten it up? So the next one I want to think about is something with texture added to it. I want to decide if I want to do texture. I think I need a little row of something textured there, even if we decide to do kind of a fake geode on the back. I got as many compliments as the back part as I did the front part. So that's something to really think about. So I'm going to take a look at this and figure out what we want our next step to be. So I decided on this one I'm going to use my little plastic shape guys. They're decorative accents. They're in the floral department in the filler section. And those kind of look like a little oblong circle, I guess. But those work really well. You also can dye them with your alcohol inks or anything like that. So this time I'm going to use some glitter glue. This is a little thicker than our other one. And I'm going to follow those kind of jaggedy ends, hopefully, and not make this so perfect this time. And this glue is definitely slower, but you do get, it's not going to run on you, and you get that nice thick thing to glue onto. So I'm going to hold this in my hand. I just dumped some into a plastic container, and I'm going to dip it. And that's, for me, the easiest way to put it on. And you may not like the red, you may like the silver better, but I think that red kind of shows it off and accents the silver even more. I may take it up a little bit right there where the two would have come to a point. So we're going to make some of these areas bigger and branch out a little bit here, so we don't have a smooth line and it looks more geode shape. And let's start with that one here. I'm going to do another one down here. You can use whatever kind of glue you've worked with and you're comfortable with. Just be careful with E6000. If you have any backings or colors or things in it, it will eat it. I think I'm going to leave this guy out. I like how out he goes, and we'll bring this guy kind of in. And this may be deciding our pattern for the back, but that's okay. If you don't like it, you take it off. And we'll just continue working with that until we get it. I think I want to kind of be careful on what it sits on when we get to kind of areas like that. I might bring it up just a little bit right there, but you don't want too much of that sitting on a funky kind of shape. And then I might come back in with my red glitter and just do the edges so that it's concentrated red and it stands out more like this part up here does. And just watch your guys when they're drawing. You don't want them sliding around. And anything you can clean up, or you also can paint back over your white if you need to. So I went around with my red glitter and I really like that. But I'm going to come back in these areas and I'm going to put in my alcohol inks. I tried another ink in there and it really didn't blend or bleed out like I want it to. I'm using red pepper because it's the darkest of the alcohol inks in the red. And I'm just going to put it a little bit here and there. And I'm keeping my heat gun handy so that I can hit that if it starts to bleed anywhere I don't want it to bleed, but also to set it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this guy and this guy. So I'm coming back and adding texture to this. Doesn't that look really good? And what I am doing is actually using the silver foil, and I started just using up my crumbs basically from our last go around, but just any of these pieces. And I'm using my glitter glue to put this on with. The reason that I'm doing that is it's got texture in it. It doesn't lay flat, and I don't want this to lay flat. And I'm not flattening out when I put it on. It almost kind of like dissolves or something with this glue, but I'm giving it texture. I'm letting it kind of go how it wants to go and not pushing it flat, and just leaving it kind of like it wants to go on there. And I'm just taking, I got some glue on my hands, so now the foil is going to stick to me. So I'm trying to just take a little section at a time, not too wide, but if it's wider than what you would have wanted, just kind of push it down and catch the glue there. Don't make it harder than it is. Just try to not overthink it. Let's see if I can get this guy going here. I've got one section that's pretty good. Okay. So I got those guys on, and now I'm just going to come back and kind of make them look like texture, not like foil. And I'm just going to keep working all the way around. These are on here really good. If you're worried about them not being on there good, go back and put some more glue in them, or glitter, or glue. We're going to divide these into sections. Instead of leaving this one big piece this time like I did the others, we're going to do this in sections. So what I'm going to do, I've got here, and we're just going to kind of make these individual sections. And I had some pencil marks here, and we're just kind of basically joining these ones that are sticking out together. You can make it one big one. You can do whatever you want. Just trying to show you some different ideas. You can keep these flat with no texture. So if you're worried about anything knocking off or whatever, you could just do the foil like I did on the other one and the floating, and just keep it with the paints and do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But and that way the focus will be more on the front. But we're almost doing like two individual projects, because we've got the front and then we've got the back, so they're almost like two different ones. So that's up to you. So I am just going to bring it from here to here now, and I'm just going to paint that in. I may give it a couple of coats, and we will take it from there. So we're going to float color again, and we're going to be doing it along the edges of the red to kind of blend it in with the other color. And I still need to go and add a couple layers there when I'm done. But we're butting up against that last color we put on. You need to blend out just a little bit more here. Get all those white guys covered. I'm going to stop and reload here. We're going to just cover up those guys. You can go up on that red a little bit, and my edge wasn't clean enough when I started on that one. So I'm going to take a Q-tip and clean the edge off. And I always try to keep water clean. Sometimes I have to go and change it out so that I have clear, nice water when I need to do things like that. But there you can kind of see how we blend it in. And this red's really going to help make this pop even more. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the other four. And we'll start working on their centers. So I've done this, and I'm still working on base coating our red, so I'm going to let that dry for a minute. So I'm going to go back, and we're going to add a line, or liner work, to our silver. So I'm going to be using the red. I kind of went back and forth between the red and the dark red, so totally up to you. And I think I'm going to go back and add a few more lines in the rest of it too. You can use pins, any type of pins that you want to, but you've got to be careful when you go to varnish them. You've got to make sure that they can either varnish or just really, on this whole project, I would use really dry varnishes. And what I mean like for that is very light coats, so none of it is looking wet at all. And do a few of those before you start to even think about doing some heavier coats. I'm going to go back and kind of get this guy here. But I think the lines are what really adds to him, and we're going to be running lines through that red as well. So that's something to think about. And this kind of just helps break up our silver. That makes it look more geode like. My dad used to take us rock hunting all the time when we were little, and my grandparents actually owned a rock shop in Colorado. So I'm that person that's always picking up rocks and looking at the rocks, and my inheritance is a big box of rocks that are hard to move, trust me. Ask my husband. Okay, so we have one there, and I'm looking at this one here, and I really think this needs one here. I might try the darker red here, and I'm still debating on if I want one more there. This is what happens. Delta is such a good brand. These are 10, 15 minimum years old. And some of these that I have, and the lid, just in Arizona, they just disintegrate. But as long as you keep that thing in the very top, that little lid part in the hole, these last so much better than the other paints. I know they're more expensive, but man, Delta lasts a long time. So, where my other brands will start drying up in a couple of years. My main colors I use up so much faster it doesn't matter, but my accent colors I don't. So I want to start somewhere where it's not hard to pick up again. And as you can see, this is not perfect. It's not, I don't know if I'm going to connect that one or not there. I like the darker in that. And I come back and blend those ends in together. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish up this line, and we'll look at that back section. So for the inside of these, I'm going to be, again, this is a filler. I picked this up at Michael's. It's kind of a mirror type glass, I would guess. I'm going to put that in the center here, but on the outside I'm going to use that glass glitter again. And I'm going to start with the outside first because I want to put silver glitter with the inside. So I think I'm going to start with the outside first. And I'm just going to kind of do it, kind of start where our floating or shading stopped. And I'm going to use a brush to kind of put it on this time because I'm bringing it forward towards that center. I'm just using an old tough craft brush, paint brush, and because we're not going to need a whole lot. Get my tray under here again. I think I'm going to try just putting this in my hand and roll it in my hand like I did the other one that time. Try to keep it out of my paint that's still wet. I think that's pretty good right there. And also you don't want your paint so thick, or your glue, excuse me, that it starts to drip or anything, and by doing it, moving around with a brush, you kind of keep it from doing that. So I'm just going to do the same thing to the other three areas. So I've got it on all four. I did get it on my wet paint. I think it's kind of cool. We'll see if it stays. If not, it'll be hard to paint around anyway, so I'm probably going to rub that off a little bit anyway. But I did like it there. Maybe we'll go back and put some on later after I paint the lines because they'll be hard. I'm going to be using some thicker silver glitter glue. This was the one that came out so clumpy. I think this would be really good to, nice and thick, to put our kind of mirror stuff on with. And I do want it thicker. And you can even layer it. So that's an individual opinion. And I'm going to do the same thing again with this that I did for the last one. I have so many supplies. I have 2 tables set up in the other room with more supplies. This is crazy. Now, whatever you think, if you don't want them sticking up sideways, and lay them down more, or if you want to hand put them on one by one so that the mirror part is showing forward, you can do that. That is totally up to you. So, I'm going to go ahead and finish the other 3. They're not real cool looking, and if you don't like the individual ones, you can do the smaller ones. But what I'm going to come in and do the liner work now on around our edges, and I'm going to start just by going and connecting them with our dark red. And what I mean is just follow this kind of pattern here. Doesn't have to be exact, but I'm kind of trying to stay within that line between that and the float, just to cover up anything that might show. And I'm going to do that on all of them, and then we'll go into painting bigger lines. Alright, so now I'm just going to do lines. I'm trying to figure out if I want to go there and up or across and up. I think this looks more natural, but what we can do is we can break those lines off so they go like that, and over the dog hair and through the woods. This guy is too straight right here. Take a damp Q-tip and get him off of there. He just looked, that middle one just looked not good, just being straight. I'm trying not to put my fingers on anything wet or squishy right now. You can let it dry. You don't have to do that yet. So I'm going to come in with some white now. I want to do white and silver, of course. Maybe I'll switch to a smaller liner. And let's do this guy. This is great for us people that don't make straight lines. You can just put it on and let it go whatever direction it wants to go. I had the first one too watered down. It wasn't bright enough. Putting that finger there, like I said, it's a little bit harder to do. I think I'm going to take one from here and then of course there, and I'm going to figure out which silver I want. We know the metallics don't show up real well. I don't know if this glitter one would or not. Sometimes the glitters show up more and you actually can mix and match them, but we also could put the light gray underneath again if we wanted to. Yeah, that's just going to be glittery. I'm going to try the metallic. We'll see how. Part of the metallic, you really got to shake them really, really, really well, because they've got the metallic part that goes to the bottom, and a lot of times you'll get like the oil part at the top, so, and that's why it's seems so thin. I'm not crazy about this red line right there. I might get rid of that one. I'll have to see. And they don't have to connect. Let's see, that's already giving it that illusion of the geodes. Isn't that cool? I know I went out of that guy's lane a little bit, but yeah, the only thing I really don't care for is that red line right there. The rest of it, I am really liking that. The great thing about this, like I said, is you can just do your own thing. You may like the 4, you may not like the 4. Go back to the 1. Let's talk a little bit about this guy here. And they do get heavy. We're going to let that guy dry, and then we'll varnish him, and then we'll start on the middle. This guy, I did the exact same thing. I have the glass under here, and then I started adding layer upon layer, and all that was my glitter glue in gold, just glitter glue. I probably picked that up at the dollar store, and then I had these little guys, these are little fillers. I picked those up at Michael's, and I just started adding layer on layer, and then I had some glass, white glass I put on top with some gold flakes or some gold glitter, and then I just pulled those out a little bit. We're gonna do a little bit more around these. You can see how I've done this one, and it's kind of like we did up here. We're gonna do it a couple different ways here. I'm watering my paint down a little bit. I don't want it as thick as it was before, and I'm going to start on the outside. And this guy had more room than this guy. Let's go to this one where you can see it a little bit more with the white up here. Again, we don't want them even. Tell me that again and again. And you're just going to go around. You don't want to bring them up into the glass. You want to just stop before you get into the glass. But then what we're going to do is after you get that part done, we're going to come back in with our white. Again, we're going to water it down. And then we're going to pull it the opposite direction. You want to go up into the white really good, or where the crystal glass starts. And try and pull those down in between. Try not to get on them. If you do, it's no big deal. But if you pull those kind of down in between, then you get that variegated in and out. Kind of makes it look real feathery. And that kind of gives it more of that crystal look. Isn't that looking really cool? I still was not happy with this area right here, and I wasn't going to put any big crystals on, but I think I'm going to go ahead and put some bigger crystals on here. You could do it after you varnished it, or you can do it if you're not worried about spray varnishing over the top of it. That's up to you. But I'm going to be using some, again, fillers in your floral department. And they have different sizes of little crystal kind of looking things. They're plastic. But I picked out the little bit smaller ones, and that's what I'm going to use. Again, I'm going to be using the silver, the thicker silver glue, and we'll put that on here. You got nice thunder effects rolling in the background here. And I don't know all where I want to put this yet, so I'm kind of be looking as I go. We don't want to push these down too much because we want these kind of nice and thick so that we can sink our crystals into them. I may bring them and do them kind of like in that area because they do take up a little bit more room. And you could even mix and match this and with the mirror kind of looking stuff. look for stuff like this in the thrift stores. I can't tell you how much of this I have found at the thrift stores. And I am going to be bringing this all the way through. And we're going to have to be really careful on how we set to let this dry, because this is heavier. And we want to make sure that we kind of have it standing up so it doesn't slide while it dries. I'll probably put it in my stabilizer again. But the silver really brings out the silver of the stones, and you could color your stones with alcohol inks if you wanted to. I'm trying to stand some up and lay some down so I get a couple of different heights in here, but that's going to look awesome. And usually with your crystals you kind of want to taper out a little bit, so we'll kind of look at that when we get there. I'm trying not, they're pretty even, but hey, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna get some smaller guys out still. I think we need to move him up into there and kind of bring this guy out so that he's kind of pointing. If we can kind of point that guy down, take a look at him from different angles and see if I need to. I think I need to bring one more out just that direction, and that looking really cool. The other thing I want you to think about is you don't have to do the gourds inside. If you like everything we've done here, then just do that. You don't have to do, excuse me, the crystals inside. You can just do it, and you could even break these in half if you wanted to. I might try something like that too. That guy seems a little bit bigger. I'm trying to find one that's a little bit flatter. Come on, hands, work. Got a little bit of glue and I'm sticking to it. Isn't that really cool? I think that's what that needed. So I've decided I wasn't going to go high on these. I keep saying it, but that's the great thing about these. You can keep adding and adding and adding. So I'm going to put an extra layer on here, and I'm only doing 3 stones, I think, on top. I need one more right here for the height. And I'm just taking my glitter glue and dropping it in there and setting that guy right like that. So I'm not going to bend them too much here till we've got them dry, but now we have our height and our different layers so they don't look so even. I wanted to show you a piece of geode or agate and kind of show you all those lines that we've been talking about. This isn't a great one, but it shows up pretty well when you put the light behind it. But look at all those individual lines, and look at all of these individual colors. We've got like a light yellow here and a brown here and kind of an ivory behind that. So that's kind of what we're trying to create. We've got a white out on the side of this out one here. And this little line right here, we've got 2 back-to-back lines. So that's what we're really trying to create. And then we have the center here. But I wanted to show you these lines too on the outside of the crystal. See all those lines? And that's kind of what we mimicked. And a lot of times this will open up and it'll just be the crystal kind of points. It won't be solid in there. So that's kind of what we're trying to create, just to kind of give you an idea. And so that you know that's what nature does. This one has not been colored at all. So to varnish my gourd, I have been using gloss, and you also could use the triple thick crystal, which is even more plastic kind of shine looking. It's thicker, brighter, which you may really like that. The semi-gloss, you can, if that's your thing, be really careful with your humidity. Just watch your humidity, make sure that it doesn't turn white on you. But you want to do dry coats first. Dry coats mean you're spraying it light enough that you're not doing a thick, you don't see any moisture from the varnish, and do a few of those. Kind of know your products if you use things that you're not familiar with before. If you're going to take pictures, take them before you varnish them, like the back side of this gourd. Take pictures before you varnish it, because once you varnish it with a high gloss, it's really hard to take good pictures after that. Just really be careful, do lots of thin coats, and get that on there. If there's anything that you don't want to varnish, you can put them on after you varnished, like if you wanted to do any of these. If you have them on and you don't want to varnish them, put a piece of painter's tape over the top or anything like that. So it's totally up to you. If you even wanted to hand varnish it, you could. That's, again, that's just how I do it, and you can do it any way you want. For the inside, to stick our crystals into our gourd with, we're going to be using our silicone caulking, white, Alex Plus. We've gone over that. If you're going to be using the caulking, invest in an easy caulk gun. These are so much easier than our old ones where you struggle. These are a piece of cake. And they really do make it easier. We're going to talk about our crystals, what kind and where they come from, in a different part of the video. And so we've already gone through that, so I'm not going to discuss that at this point. I'll just tell you what I'm using. This one I had dug out a little deeper than I normally would, because I was originally going to put a hand-grown crystal in there, and I just don't care for it, so we're going to be putting regular crystals in there. I'm going to start with some of the bigger crystals. We had some colored ones left at miriamjoy.com, but some of these fat ones in the middle, and then I'm going to go to the pre-colored ones, and then that other part we talk about how to color your own. I want to use some of these because we use these in the back, and then I've got some rocks, some stones, things to think about. This is just glass on this outside. I've got the crystals on the inside, and I put them on before I colored them. I actually colored them afterwards, and if you did that, then you would want to varnish that. We'll show you how to color them and then how to varnish them and then put them in. So, but I just want to show you the difference. You can really hardly tell that this is glass versus crystal. It just all blends in together, and there's so much you can use for it. So we're going to start. This is just it's been sitting a while, so it's on there pretty good. A frosting tip that I like putting on the ends of mine. And if I didn't cut this up so high and I cut it down lower, it would be easier to take on and take off. And I am just going to start putting this in. You want this deeper because you don't really want your gourds, like the blue one, it kind of spills out into the front. We don't really want to do that. I'm going to stop there and kind of spread it around. And this is a great, 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 great glue. If you think about it, they use that to even do mosaics and all kinds of stuff. So that is really going to set your stones in there very, very well. This is a frosting knife. You can use any kind of knife you want to. I would go to the thrift store and look for knives. Don't get them out of your kitchen. You don't want to cross them over once they're craft knife. Let's keep them a craft knife. And we want this kind of thick. We don't want this real thin. And I'm trying to get it way down in that crack, way down at the bottom there. And it really is kind of like frosting a cake. You may want to keep like some wet wipes or something like that next to your table, that if you get it on your hand, you can wipe it off, or on your gourd. And I'm going to use a little bit more of this in the center, because I want this just a little bit more. Be able to push my stones in a little bit deeper in the center. And remember, this is going to take a while to dry. The thicker it is, the longer it's going to take to dry. I would give it, actually, it depends so many things. Your humidity, your weather, your temperatures. But I would give it at least a week. If it's thicker, give it a couple of weeks to dry. The more it's exposed, the faster it dries. If you've ever seen the crystal geodes, or the crystal, what am I trying to say, amethyst, the big amethyst, most of those come from Brazil, and they are, the outside always looks so different. Well, that outside is actually concrete. They concrete them because they're so fragile that they want to keep that protected. So those big ones that you see with that stuff around the outside is actually concrete. Now we'll try to put this a little bit closer. I'm going to still put that in the hole a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to lay this down around the edges so nothing really sticks out. You could be doing this with your knife. I just like to use my fingers. I like to be messy. I always laugh at the people that do the videos and they have these perfect tables. I'm an artist. I'm messy. Okay, so this color doesn't show up too much from the stones, as you can see by our first one. Because it's white, it kind of fades in, so that's great. You could color it if you wanted to have like a red background. I use food coloring to color mine because it's thicker and it doesn't change the consistency of your background. Red is a harder one to color, so kind of keep that in mind. So let's start by putting some of these stones in. I only want a few in this middle. I really don't want a lot. And you kind of want the nice pointed tip out towards the front. And I think I'm going to take my stabilizer, and we're going to be doing this from the top side. So I've set this up so that it's nice and even. And I'm just going to start putting these red crystals around our white now. These red crystals will cover that, but they're actually from the fish section in the pet store. If you buy them in the craft section, you usually can't get them colored as nicely, and they're usually more expensive. As you can see, this is going in very fast. It's not taking us real long to do this. Trying to find a thinner couple of ones I can get in here. His crystal part up to the top. Oh well. You can put different colors in with it. You don't need to stick with just one color. You can put different colors in it, whatever you want. I would have actually liked a couple of more red ones, but that is all the red that I had. I have pink, yellow, orange, purple, blue. So I'm going to use some of these bigger ones. Just to fill in those real big spots. Maybe one more over there, and I think we're good. And then we're going to decide on our next layer if we want to go to our little crystals or if we want to go to some glass first. I've kind of also got like a rose color. Maybe I'll do those on the edges. There's so many options. There's so much you can do. I wanted to kind of look at these guys here too. There's my crystals, my good crystals. I think I'm going to start with a little layer of these. These are glass. I found these at the thrift store. I need to wipe my knife off here. So this is actually glass. Just glass. I've got some bigger pieces. And I didn't want to do the little crystals all the way down. I think having the bigger pieces. And I'm kind of trying to point the bigger ones so they kind of have come to a point as much as I possibly can. Got a little bit of white showing there, so I want to kind of cover that up. I was trying to figure out how to get my silver. The only thing I could kind of think of is either painting some metallic on the ends of the stones or taking some silver glitter in one of these sections and putting them around like we did with our little filler parts. So but you do what you like, and I'm just gonna finish him up all the way around. So I've gone through and I've put these around and kind of filled it up. I'm trying to just leave that last outside layer for our little crystal plastic fillers. The one thing we want to make sure of is when you're doing around, do it all the way completely. You can add more in, but make sure you have at least a circle all the way around. And I'm going to go up these guys a little bit and up here a little bit too. So these other little fillers, they're plastic fillers, crystals, or whatever you want to call them. And they have this little flat side. I'm trying to stay away from that. I'm trying to get them more towards the pointy or things like that. That's kind of what I'm headed for. And we want to make sure that we cover up all of our white. We don't want any of our white to show if possible. So that's something to think about as you're working on these. I might have to get my now, like on this guy, we've got some here and here. We have to decide if we want to put it. It's too small for another one of these guys, so we're going to put some of our other little crystal glass, some smaller pieces. I'm putting some smaller pieces in there. I'll go back later and catch that. So that's kind of how we do it. You do have time, but once you really start this, I don't think I would walk away from it. You want to kind of finish it up. It's not going to dry real fast, but especially the thinner areas like on the edges, they're going to dry faster because they've got thinner and they're more exposed to the air. But aren't those pretty? Those are really pretty. Those are starting to just kind of make it pop. I might put one on the outside. I may have to get a squirt of this stuff. There we go. And it's okay to bring it over the edges. If you don't like it, don't do it. But I'm trying to cover those edges up. That is my goal, is I don't really want you to see the edge of the gourd. I want it to just kind of look like it's coming out of that. And you can even make these wider at those areas if you wanted to. Just have fun with it. I'm just going to finish the outside, and then we'll pretty much be done with our crystals. That's the easy part. So I put little tiny pieces of the glass on the edges, and you just want to make sure that you don't have anything show of the white part, but you could keep working for hours. So you decide when it's good and leave it alone and go from there. But isn't that really cool? Look how it's already reflecting the light. But I wanted to point the difference out. This one was cut so much deeper than this one was, and I like this so much better, the inset. So make sure that you're cutting those deep enough that those set in. But isn't that awesome? And the way it's reflecting the light, and you've got different textures, so they're reflecting it differently. But that is really cool. The one thing I would do if you're using like a stabilizer or anything like that is I would lay a towel in there so that you don't damage any of the back part if it's a little bit fragile. You want to kind of protect that. So just lay a towel down if you're working with something like that and continue on.